Welcome back, everybody, to episode 55 of On the Wild. I'm your host, Riley Keenan. With me, as always, my partner in crime, Anuj Basker. We have a very, very, very special guest for you. Everyone that is in our program would be elated to see who is in front of our screen right now. But for those of you at home that don't know who he is, we got Dan Berlin with us. Dan, please tell those who don't know you a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys. I mean, it is a real treat to be here talking football with two of my esteemed former students. I am an assistant professor in the sport media program at Ryerson University, and certainly a proud Bengals fan. So this seems kind of timely. I think we got something good happening here, gents.
Perfect.
Yeah. As soon as that game ended, the AFC Championship game, when the Bengals knocked off the Chiefs, I immediately texted Riley. I was like, we got to get Dan on, or at least try to. We got it done. Can't wait for this to get going. But like you said, you are a Bengals fan. So, just go into it a little bit, how you became a fan, when you became a fan, and sort of what it's been like to be a Bengals fan.
Well, that's great. And just so you know, I didn't have to clear up too much of my calendar. I always have time for you two, gents. So I'm glad this worked out. It was really nice after the win over Kansas City in the championship game. My phone just completely lit up. And in fact, the amazing part was it wasn't just, my current set of friends, or obviously a great group of students like yourselves who are congratulating me on social and through my text. It was actually something that went back decades. People who I hadn't spoken to in, honestly, 20 or 30 years who were sending me their congratulations for the Bengals win. And I think that's just testament to the fact that I do go way back with the Bengals. Maybe not quite Ken Anderson back in terms of my fandom, but Boomer Esiason undeniably was my hero growing up when he was drafted by the Bengals in the mid-'80s and right up until that Super Bowl 23, where he was the league MVP back in 1988. I have, and it's a great story, and I love to share it because for whatever reason, football has been in my blood since I was literally 6-7 years old. In fact, one of my earliest stories was as a 7-year-old. I was downstairs watching the Monday night game as a 7-year-old kid, and they used to start at 9:00 Eastern. They didn't finish until well after midnight, and it was one of those compelling games. I actually remember it was like the Cleveland Browns against the New York Jets, and it was tied going into the fourth. I couldn't pry myself away. So what ended up happening was I watched the game in its entirety, and usually at 7 years old, your bedtime isn't 12:30 in the morning. So I snuck upstairs trying to get past my parents, who happened to still be up in the upstairs den, the family room, watching TV themselves. And they caught me red-handed, at which point they're like, "What are you doing up?" And I was like, "Well, I was watching the Monday Night Football game, and let me tell you what happened." And I start getting into the story of the game. Well, it's tied, and this is going back and forth. They literally were like, "Dan, stop talking. Get upstairs now." And that was it. I was never grounded. I didn't get in trouble. It's funny how I ended up becoming a bit of a football storyteller and getting into sport media. No surprise there. Fast forward, I actually was a Dallas Cowboys fan first. And that was because my mom bought me a Tony Dorsett jersey from the Sears catalog in the late 1970s. I wore that proudly. What happened was the Cowboys played the San Francisco 49ers in the 1981 NFC Championship game. Of course, a famous game, Dwight Clark, the catch, and everything else. Well, as an impressionable 8-year-old boy at that time, when Dallas lost, I vowed never to allow myself to have my heart broken again, and I flipped on the spot to become a 49ers fan. Now, the irony is they went on to play the Bengals in that Super Bowl. And it was Ken Anderson going up against Joe Montana and the Niners. Of course, that was the first of 4 consecutive Super Bowls for the Niners. And I followed them closely for the first 3. And I was a Niners fan until one day for the holidays, I was gifted a $20 cash. And it was burning a hole through my pocket, guys. I was like, what am I going to do? I wanted to go down. At that time, there was no internet. You couldn't order online. There was one store in Toronto. It's called The Locker Room. It was at Bloor and Young. They were the only store in Toronto that sold NFL merchandise. And I was like, I got to get myself a Niners hat. So I go down to the store, and the only bloody hat they had, guys, was this horrible scripted Niners hat that wasn't scarlet red and gold. It was the Kansas City Chief colors, fire engine red and canary yellow for a Niners hat. Even then, I had enough fashion sense to know that this wasn't going to cut it. So I was like, I cannot, out of principle, I can't buy that hat. So it came down to 2 hats. The beautiful black and orange Halloween-y colors of the Cincinnati Bengals, the same hat Sam Weish wore, that script hat on the sidelines, or the Green Bay Packers, the green with the yellow, both equally calling to me. And I, as I would later lament for many, many years, realized I chose the wrong one on that day. But all kidding aside, I put the Bengals hat on and I transformed that day in 1986 as a 13-year-old to become a Bengals fan, and I've never looked back.
That's actually pretty remarkable because I hadn't been a fan of any football team when I was younger, and I was headed to Pittsburgh for a hockey tournament with my buddy whose parents were driving me. And at that point, I was just a fan of Tom Brady. Anywhere Tom Brady went, I was a fan. But I wasn't a Patriots fan because, they had a lot of hate towards them. So in that tournament, we went to a Pittsburgh mall. We went to a Lids, and there were only 2 hats available. There were the Browns, and then there was, I think it was the Washington, I'll say, no. But I went with the Browns because, the Commanders. Oh, yeah, the new Commanders. Love to see it. But I went with the Browns hat because initially, I'm colorblind, so I did think the colors were red, black, and white. So I thought the color scheme's awesome. I've come to learn otherwise recently.
Hysterical for the Browns, especially. Oh, red and black. This is perfect. Of course, Anuj, your Falcons fan, knows a little bit about the beauty of red and black. It's funny. I was a huge Bengals fan. Of course, the Browns, always one of the great division rivals back then. Now AFC North. Back then it was the AFC Central. And a friend of mine in high school had a Browns corduroy hat, and I literally would call it to his face. I go, that hat is putrid. Well, of course the Browns unis are classic, but to that point I was never a fan. Always the black and orange, not the brown.
Fair enough.
My story is not as exciting as being a fan. I just turned on Madden and I just liked the colors and stuck with it. So really not as exciting, but no,
it's cool. I mean, listen, we all have that in common. We all kind of were drawn from the color scheme to the team, and then it just latches on to you. And next thing you know, and I really felt as a 13-year-old, like once I kind of got into an age, I am the consummate loyalist when it comes to my teams. Like I do not waver. I am a Bengals fan through and through. And I think part of what's made getting to Super Bowl 56 so sweet, 33 years. And I mean, just a ton of heartbreak and sad sack seasons along the way. So this one's been particularly fun. It's been just a great ride, and obviously a chance to, follow a new young quarterback like Joe Burrow. And I know, Riley, you talk about, Tom Brady, who just retired, and having a chance to watch his entire career. And it's a treat, when you see somebody who's just really good at what they do. I mean, I was never a Patriots fan, but I couldn't, kind of like Michael Jordan. It's like, you're taking me on this ride of greatness. I'm going to watch every minute of it and just give credit where it's due.
Yeah, absolutely. And with Tom Brady retiring, it kind of is an end of an era. We've seen Drew Brees retire, Phillip Rivers, Peyton Manning's been gone for a little while. So it does feel like the end of an era and the beginning of a new one, obviously with Joe Burrow going to the Super Bowl. So I'm kind of, obviously you were alive through the 90s and early 2000s. So, what does it kind of feel like with this new shift of quarterbacks in the league?
Yeah, no question. I mean, it even dates back, when the famous, I think, what is it, the 1983 draft, where like Elway and Marino and all these great quarterbacks.
Jim Kelly.
Kelly was drafted. Great call. Yeah, so all these great. I think the first quarterback taken, if trivia wise, was a guy named Todd Blackledge, who went to Kansas City, but he was a bit of a bust. He's now a college commentator to this day. But anyway, that was Kenny O'Brien was in that class. That was a big class. And then you talk, Riley, and you share about all these quarterbacks that came into the league circa 2000, and now we're seeing 20 years later, we're seeing this new class of quarterback with the retirement of guys like Brady and Breeze. I mean, Rodgers obviously still has some good years left and playing at a high level. But what we're seeing, and it's really the AFC, and And that's kind of why I look at this opportunity. I mean, it's hard to get to the Super Bowl. It's hard to get back to the Super Bowl. Just look at Patrick Mahomes, as great a quarterback as he is, 4 straight AFC championships, 1 Super Bowl, 2 Super Bowl appearances. Like, that's it. It's not like you're just getting there every year. I'll say this for Mahomes too. It's just getting harder and harder now that you have, you've got Allen now, Josh Allen in the division. Obviously, Joe Burrow has quickly emerged as a star caliber quarterback. Obviously, Justin Herbert with the Chargers there as well, and of course, Mahomes is still Mahomes, still a great quarterback. So, I even feel like I'm probably missing a name. I mean, you still have Lamar Jackson, who last time I checked, when he's healthy, he's pretty good too. Personally, though, and listen, let's give your boy Baker some props too. I mean, maybe a shade below those other names. Yeah. We'll see. Jury's still out. I think next year is going to be a big year for him in terms of proving himself. But the point is, wow, like the AFC, right now is like to get to the top, to win that conference is only going to be tough. And what a next decade it's going to be with the talent in that division.
Yeah. And if you were to pick one of those quarterbacks that you mentioned going forward for the next 10 years, which one would you pick? Not to put you on the spot.
Not Baker. But and kidding aside, listen, I'll stick with my guy. I think, and that's out of like total respect for everything everyone does. In fact, Josh Allen was, watching Josh Allen play the quarterback position is impressive because he is just a machine. He can throw, he can run, he's tough as nails. I mean, Josh Allen is great. Of course, what we have with Burrow in Cincinnati is obviously an incredibly skilled player, incredibly smart quarterback, but he definitely has this swagger to him. And it's not just like, hey, I'm blinged out and I wear cool shades. Like, he's got the cool factor, but that ain't, that's not going to stand up the test of time. The real factor, the swagger that he has is he's a winner. And as a friend always said, winners win. That's what makes them winners. And that's the difference in this league. If you can win in this league, you're great. You're great if you can win. You can put up all the numbers, you can put up all the stats, but at the end of the day, it'll always come down to putting up those wins. You look at Tom Brady and the 7 Super Bowl rings, like that's undeniably his legacy as the GOAT is because he just flat out won more. What's interesting about Burrow in this particular Super Bowl, because if you remember, it was Brady who won in his second year. The feeling is like if anyone possibly could have a shot at taking a stab at, 7 Super Bowls, and let's be honest here, guys, there's a long, long way for anyone to go to get there. But you figure someone's going to have to start early enough to get a few under their belt. So that's kind of funny. I know Burrow's getting those comparisons. Listen, at the end of the day, long, long way to go. But between, Heisman Trophy winner, national champion, getting to a Super Bowl in his first full season, it's certainly, interesting and fun to watch.
100%. He's the first overall quarterback in NFL history to go to a Super Bowl in his first 2 years. So he's accomplished so much in such a short amount of time, which is very impressive, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. I was reading today, I think Max Kellerman came out and said, like, if the Bengals win, of course, I don't have any control over it and, whatever. Like, but if he was to win, even as just a follower of the league, like he legitimately is in that conversation of becoming one of those faces of the league and faces of the game, because he's just he's cool, he's got a little style to him, he's pretty good quarterback too.
Yeah. And on that note of what a Super Bowl could do for Joe Burrow's career, there's been a lot of back and forth about Matthew Stafford and Burrow and kind of who it means more to, because obviously on the side of Stafford, he's had a losing history and, he couldn't get it done in the playoffs. He was 0-3 heading into this year. So Super Bowl now would prove that he is one of the most talented quarterbacks we've ever seen in this league. And you can't doubt that. But on the other hand, with Burrow to win in his second year, with the youth that they have with this team going 2-14 just 2 years ago, I mean, who do you think it means more to win a Super Bowl this year?
Well, I think it's a good question. It's subjective. I mean, let's give Matthew Stafford a little bit of love here too, right? Like it's interesting. The one distinction I'll make is this: like Matthew Stafford played for Detroit, which was a terrible, terrible franchise, and much like we talked about Burrow and even under Zach Taylor, you go 2-14, and then they lost a lot of games last year, 4-11-1 last year, and started looking like they took some steps, but you never got the feeling they were going to be a good team. But somehow, between the young receiving talent and Burrow, they've taken a perennial sad sack franchise that doesn't ever win. Like, you got to understand this, guys. Like, I had resigned myself to the fact that the Bengals don't play in Super Bowls, never will play in Super Bowls, because they aren't meant for the Cincinnati Bengals. And I'm sure as a Browns fan, you can relate. Like, it's not ever in the cards.
Yeah.
I think what Burrow and listen, the coaching staff, it's a collective team effort. They obviously are buying into something in a big way. But the fact that they are actually in a Super Bowl and Burrow took them there, I think is incredible. Listen, Matthew Stafford left Detroit to go to a really, really, really good football team that was in a Super Bowl not very long ago, replaced Jared Goff, and clearly was a major upgrade for them. And now they're reaping the rewards of it. And listen, you put a NFL caliber quarterback, like, not just a caliber quarterback, an exceptional quarterback. Matthew Stafford is a prolific passer. He's a great quarterback. You put him on the right team, and we're starting to see, hey, listen, just how bad the Lions were. But you've taken Joe Burrow on a team that hasn't done anything, much like the Lions had it, and he brought them to a Super Bowl. So I'll maybe give a little bit of an edge to Burrow for that reason.
That's a really interesting question for me, because like we did our NBA playoff previews last year, or our finals predictions, and we were talking about like what this finals means, who this finals means more to, whether it's Giannis or Chris Paul. And we were kind of making the argument of like Giannis is going to get back eventually, so it's Chris Paul, or at least I made that argument. With the NFL, it's different, because when you make it to the Super Bowl, you never know when you're going to make it back. Dan Marino made it to the Super Bowl, I think, in his first year, right? Or his first couple of years of starting, and never made it back. Like, you would assume that you're going to make it back, but you never know. So I would kind of say it's equal, because if Burrow doesn't win this Super Bowl, you never know when you're going to get it back. Because you mentioned there's so many good quarterbacks in the AFC now. There's going to be so many great teams that it's going to be so hard to get back. So you never know if you're going to get that opportunity again. Obviously, Stafford's a little bit older. He's in his 30s, but for both, you never know if you're ever going to make it back. So I would say it's about equal.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I think you make a really compelling point there, Anush, because you don't know when you're going to get back. There's many examples of guys who don't even get there in the first place. And listen, I can't take anything away from what Matthew Stafford's done this year. The Rams, are playing good football. He's had a great playoff run. He tied for the league lead in interceptions, which I thought was kind of interesting. And if we, start breaking down the game and getting into some of the keys to the game, one of the things we look at with the Bengals, is the fact that they've won the turnover battle in the postseason. That's been their big X factor. They've been able to create turnovers. They created 7 turnovers in their 3 games. They've only turned the ball over 2 times. And that's maybe even made up for what really is just you're going to split hairs otherwise within the games. In some cases, you might even say that the other teams have maybe dominated the Bengals, maybe not dominated, but exceeded them. I think one of the stats they were showing was the Bengals have given up more yards per play than they've actually had offensively against the Raiders, Titans, and the Chiefs. Yet they've won all 3 games because of the turnovers. Matthew Stafford tied for the league lead in interceptions through 3 pick sixes this year. I think there's, we look even back at that San Francisco game, the championship game, NFC championship game, Tart had that interception right in his mitts. And if he catches a ball that really he should have caught, we're probably talking about the trilogy of the Bengals and the Niners right now. If we're really being honest, he makes that interception, that game goes, the Niners win.
Stafford threw the interception on their second possession of the game in the red zone as well.
Right.
So that was another mistake. He made multiple mistakes in that game.
Yeah. So I think that's the one thing with Stafford. I'm certainly not the first person to say it. I think, the turnovers, which have been such a key for the Bengals, Stafford's propensity. We saw Cam Akers fumble a couple times and the really tense moments of that Tampa game that they were really kind of lucky to escape after, 5 turnovers that game. So no question, I think the Bengals have been playing, really well, and Burrow hasn't been, I know he's thrown 2 interceptions to only 1 this postseason for Stafford, but I think the turnover battle is going to be key. And I think that if I were to say one person would be the one to flinch, to me, it would be Stafford. I think he's more apt to throw it.
Yeah, I agree. I think, at times Stafford tries to do a little too much. We talk about his incredible arm strength, but there's sometimes he seems to force throws. And we did see that with that, almost tart interception. And on the other side, I was trying to, look at Burrow's weaknesses heading into this game. Going into the draft and going into his second year, it kind of seemed like he would needlessly kind of push up into the pocket and force himself into pressure. But we haven't really seen that from him in the playoffs. And I think it stems from having a weak offensive line. It forces you to, get out of the pocket and be more aware of what's around you. So I almost can't find a weakness for Burrow. So I'm kind of curious to you two, going into this game, who has the opportunity to really propel their team to new heights?
Anuj, go ahead.
I think it's going to be Burrow because I think there's going to be more pressure on him to lift his team. The Rams have been very good against the run this postseason. They gave up 61 yards to the Cardinals, gave up less than 50 to both the Bucks and the Niners. And the Niners are one of the best running teams in the NFL. So to hold them to 50 is very impressive. So I think with that in mind, I think the run will be not as big as a factor for the Bengals. And I think more pressure is going to be on Burrow to sort of uplift his team and, get into the hands of Chase and Higgins and Boyd and, try to win the game with his arm rather than a more balanced attack. So I'd probably go with Burrow.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I'll be honest, even just objectively, wow, that Rams are going to be bringing the heat. I mean, Aaron Donald is, he is just the most devastating defensive player in football right now. And we saw just how he's got his mindset on getting a ring himself. So that this isn't going to be, Joe Burrow is going to just do Joe Burrow things and do whatever he wants. I mean, what we do know is against Tennessee, he absorbed 9 sacks and still found a way to find a way to win. He's down 21-3 and still found a way to get them to come back to win. It sounds like, obviously quick releases. He's not going to have a lot of time to throw. I think Joe Mixon is going to be a big factor for him. I mean, I know he's only averaged 3.8 yards per rush in the postseason, but he's still that bell cow back. He's still the guy who can take a screen pass and turn something into it. Samaje Perine is a nice second option, but Mixon is the weapon in that backfield. So you're going to have, obviously, so many different matchups that we can break down, including what, how Jamar Chase plays out in this. At least you'd like to think with Burrow, where there's a will, there's a way. This isn't necessarily going to come easy for him. He said after the Tennessee game, hey, listen, this is hard, but what he did do beautifully in the Tennessee game, aside from just taking that ridiculous amount of punishment, was he didn't cough the ball up. He didn't make the mistake. The team found a way to hang around. And I'll say this, the one thing that really isn't getting talked about, we talk about Aaron Donald, that front four, that the linebacking core, led by Von Miller, with the Rams. We certainly talk about Matthew Stafford, high-powered offense, Cooper Kupp, Odell Beckham Jr., we got the jersey representing there. He's pretty good still. He didn't look it in Cleveland, but he can play, So we talk about that. We obviously talk about Burrow and all these weapons, Mixon and Jamar Chase, obviously, and T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. The Bengals defense, let's not kid ourselves. The Bengals would not be where they are right now if they couldn't get stops. And I don't think anybody quite expected them to. Guys like Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson aren't household names yet, but they are amazing. They're terrific pass rushers. They get to the quarterback, and the fact they got to Mahomes 4 times was pretty impressive. They have arguably the best safety in the league in Jesse Bates. I mean, I don't say that with bias. He is that good. He's a
Yes.
game breaker. We'll just have to see how the cornerbacks hold up against that receiving core. I don't think you're going to stop Cooper Kupp. I think it's like, can you limit him and hope that between him and Beckham Jr. that they don't totally go off.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about matchups too, and the matchup I look at as the biggest one in the game, and for me at least, is that Cooper Kupp and Mike Hilton matchup. Because obviously Cooper Kupp, having a record-breaking season, triple crown in receiving, but in the playoffs alone, 25 catches, over 300 yards. He's had 4 touchdowns. But on the other side, Mike Hilton has only allowed 3 catches in that he's played, which is nothing short of incredible. On this side of the ball, with the way the Bengals defense is playing, I think this matchup may really dictate the pace of the game.
Yeah, great call. I mean, in man-to-man, it's going to be Hilton's job to cover Kupp. And listen, I mean, the guy's over 2,000 yards and 20 touchdowns, including the playoffs. I mean, I don't think you can stop him. He is that good right now. Maybe if Hendrickson and Hubbard could get to the quarterback and maybe force Stafford to make some throws a little more quickly or under pressure, maybe that could benefit the secondary. We'll see. I mean, Hilton had that big interception against Tannehill in the Tennessee game. Bates has come up big there. They got some playmakers out there, which is fun. And it's again, listen, let's be honest here. Ryan Tannehill had his single worst game of the season. And somehow they turned Patrick Mahomes not into like just above average. They turned him into like near mortal and turned him into a shell of himself. So hey, listen, we'll see what happens with Stafford. He's obviously an elite quarterback in his own right, but I think that defense has had some success. What are you guys looking at? Like Anuj, what are you looking at as your key matchup in this game? What are you going to be keeping an eye on?
I'm looking on the other side and how they're going to defend Jamar Chase. The Rams are they run a lot of zone coverage. They're not really a man-to-man sort of team, but when they do go in man, I want to see if they put Ramsey on him or if they put him on T. Higgins and try to double team Jamar Chase. I brought this up last week that I don't think that Ramsey, I may be overthinking it, but I don't think Jamar Chase is a great matchup for Ramsey. Ramsey's a big physical corner, and I think somebody like T. Higgins is a better matchup for him. But if they do go man-to-man, I mean, Ramsey and Jamar Chase, that's as good as you can get. So I'm very interested to see how they defend Jamar Chase in this game.
Yeah, I came across an interesting stat. Of course, Ramsey came out on media day on Monday and was saying, I want Chase, and obviously it's a big deal. It's a big matchup, and it's got all the glitz and glamour that comes with it. 2 elite players at their position. I think there were a couple of statistics that sort of revealed themselves. Number one, even just in the Rams, different packages. I think the most time that Ramsey has spent with one receiver was 68% of snaps with respect to Mike Evans in the Tampa Bay game. I think he only matched up for somewhere in the low 50s of snaps. Was that against Debo in the championship game? So they move him around a little bit. But I think the one thing playing in the Bengals' favor is the Rams have given up yards. Like they, obviously they'll get pressure to the quarterback, but they've given up yards. So we'll see, kind of how that works. But I'm definitely interested to see if Higgins and Boyd can ultimately step up. Like there have been some games where Chase has been neutralized. The nice part for the Bengals is that, options B and C can both put up 100-yard games without blinking an eye. And wouldn't surprise me if that was the case.
And we saw that last week, or in the championship game, T. Higgins went over 100 yards. Chase had the touchdown, but he was kind of neutralized throughout the game. I think he only had maybe 40 yards receiving, but, Higgins stepped up. He had over 100, so they have the players to do it for sure. But let's move on to our predictions. We'll start with you, Dan. Who do you have winning the Super Bowl, and who do you have as your Super Bowl MVP?
Yeah, it's a great call. I mean, the line's sitting right now at the Rams favored by 4.5. I think, you have to factor 3 of those points being to the fact that the game's being played at SoFi Stadium, which of course right behind me, and getting that home field advantage. Here we go through the first 54 years of Super Bowls, home team never playing in the game, and incredibly now in back-to-back years with Tampa winning it last year, it is a bit of an advantage. But we'll say this much. We look at Burrow and the Bengals. What have they just gone about? Going into Tennessee, knocking off the top seed, going into Kansas City, and knocking off the Chiefs in their home stadium as well. So I don't think the Bengals are going to really be overcome or overwhelmed by the fact that they're going to be playing in a pro Rams stadium. I think that's okay, but I think as it relates to the spread, the 4.5 points, that's a big factor as to why. And listen, great stat that came out with Burrow in games this season where he has been the dog by 3 points or more. He's 6-0 this year. Okay, whatever. What do you want to say? I think he relishes the role. I mean, if you want to make somebody like Joe Burrow the underdog, you want to make someone like Tom Brady. I mean, I'm not comparing them apples to apples, but like when guys who've been winning a lot, you're saying they're the dog, they'll sometimes come up and bite you. So I don't. Again, I look at this. I really look at this as a close game. I mean, the fact that one of the intangible X factors for the Bengals is obviously, Evan McPherson, kicker who's gone 12 for 12 in the postseason, has range well outside of 50 yards. It feels like a field goal game to me. So the 4.5 to me just screams the taking the points in this. So I definitely like Bengals plus 4.5. I'll say this much too. The 40 as the line in this game, to be going over. I could see this game like really having a feel out kind of time to it, where both teams, there's not going to be a lot of scoring in the first half. I think the second half things will ramp up. But if the Rams are able to effectively pressure the quarterback like we saw in the Tennessee game, I don't think it's just Joe Burrow going out there and just throwing touchdown after touchdown. I don't think that's kind of how it's going to go. I think he's going to be able to manage the game. I think the Bengals are going to have some drives that'll stall. And I think it's going to just be, a lower scoring game as a result of it. To me, it's kind of got a 23-20 kind of feel, a 20-17. I know like you're sitting here going, some people are, hey, this could be 34-31, and maybe it will be. Because you never know in a fourth quarter. I mean, geez, we saw KC and the Bills put up 25 points in 2 minutes. So who's to say? But if I'm putting my money where my mouth is, and I will say I am in the final of my football pool, and I got to pick one or the other. I'm gonna stick with the guys who got me here. I'll go with the black and orange. I got to go Bengals plus 4.5, under 48.5. What do you guys think?
Love it.
I'm kind of in the same boat where I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. I have Rams 24-20. So they don't cover the spread, but I think it'll be a lower scoring game. I think, like you said, I think it'll be a lower scoring game at half. I think the Rams will come out quick, and the Bengals will kind of catch up. And then in the fourth quarter, I think the Rams pressure is just going to be too much. I think Aaron Donald, Von Miller, Leonard Floyd coming after Burrow. We saw what Tennessee did to them with Jeffrey Simmons and Harold Landry. I think the Rams are just on another level than the Titans are as a defense, as a whole. And they're coming into the game hot as well with their run defense, and we've seen them get constant pressure on every quarterback that they've played. So I'm gonna go in a close game, Rams 24, Bengals 20.
I like that. I mean, I agree with both of you. I think it's going to be a lower scoring first half as well, and then it's going to ramp up a bit in the second. I do think the Rams are going to come out hot, with that home crowd. I think they're going to be extremely loud on that Bengals first drive, so it's going to be tough to. It's going to feel like Seattle, the Legion of Boom a bit with that crowd. But yeah, I think the Bengals will come out a bit slow, but we know the Rams, in the playoffs they've shown that they allow teams to come back in the game. They make a lot of errors, and they just give teams every shot they have to come back in it. So I think the Bengals will be able to make it close. I'm going with the 27-24 score in the Rams' favor. I think they take it. I think it comes down to a last-second field goal, as we've seen so much already in these playoffs. But at the end of the day, I think it really comes down. Anush talked about that the Bengals run game and the Rams having a great defensive line and being able to stop it. I think with the reverse, we've seen, the Bengals have struggled a bit against the run in the playoffs. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was able to have a pretty solid game. So I think that Cam Akers is going to have a breakout game in this playoffs. I think Sony Michel needs to get a lot of looks as well. They got a good balance between them. But I think this game goes down to the wire. It's all about pressure as well. The Bengals don't blitz too much, and that's going to be good because Stafford is really good against the blitz. We've seen that already this year. And at the same way, you talk about, Burrow taking 9 sacks. I think he's learned a lot from that as well. And he's learned, a lot of other quarterbacks, when they're pressured, if you were pressured as many times as Joe Burrow was, they, throwing the ball away a lot or forcing errors. He's the kind of quarterback, he's taking 9 sacks because he'll take a sack instead of throwing it away. A lot of guys will create a turnover instead of just losing 7 yards. And sometimes that's what you got to do. And it shows that he's already got so much experience, at such little time in the league. It's tough to choose a favorite. Sport media is not going to like me for choosing the Rams, but I gotta go with the team I've been cheering for all year. Well, not cheering for. Sorry. As soon as I made that Stafford trade, I was on the bandwagon. So
yeah, both of us were. We haven't mentioned it yet, but both Riley and I have been on the Rams ever since they traded for Stafford. So we've been kind of riding the Rams wave all season. So
yeah, I like how you both didn't tell me this before you during the show. You're like, dude, right? That's okay. I got to a point where, I'm just a football fan, and getting to see my team in the big stage is obviously a thrill, and all these steps that it takes to get here week after week and just enjoying these thrilling victories. Listen, now it's up to the two teams. We get the thrill of being able to watch it with all the pomp and the halftime show. It should be a lot of fun too. Get some commercials mixed in. So, it's one of my favorite days of the year, and having my team in it only makes it that much better. But full marks to the Rams too. Like, truthfully, they slayed the beast. They knocked off Brady and the Bucks as a big step to get here and had to overcome a 10-point deficit in the championship game. So they deserve to be here too. Well, hey, we'll see what happens. Both teams are coming in hot. Both teams are feeling pretty good about themselves. So I think we're all saying it's going to be a close game. We're all basically plus 4.5. So when you look at a game like that, what's it going to come down to? It'd probably come down to a turnover, maybe come down to a kick. McPherson is just this. He's a story. Like he's an incredible story. The only kicker drafted, and he's just like making everybody cry. He's just that good. So he could be a factor too. We'll see how it all shakes down. Yeah. I heard you had a little bit of trivia for me. Is that true though? Little Bengals. Yes. Oh yeah. Little Bengals trivia, sort of test it. What do you think?
Before we get to that, Super Bowl MVP, who you got?
Oh, good call. Ooh. All right. Well, listen, if the Bengals win it, undeniably, the quarterbacks are always going to take it. I think with Stafford being that great story of never having won it, I think I'm just going to pick the quarterbacks. Like, at the end of the day, you can never go wrong picking the quarterback. But I think if the Bengals win, Joe Burrow is going to have an awful lot to do with it. And I think the same goes for Stafford if the Rams take it. I guess you could make a case that maybe Donald steps up and has a monster day, but I'll stick with the quarterbacks. I'll let one of you guys maybe take someone else.
And that's the direction I was going with Aaron Donald. The way I think this game is going to go, I think it'll come down to that pressure. And I think Donald is going to have a huge day. Like you said, it may come down to the turnover. Maybe, he forces a fumble, something like that. But I think it's going to be Aaron Donald. I think the betting favorites are Burrow and Stafford, as they should be. But I'm going to go out on a limb a little bit and say Aaron Donald.
I'm sorry, Dan. I'm going to have to agree with Anush here. I think Aaron Donald as well. I think he's going to have a big day. I think, 2.5 sacks we can see in his future, possibly a forced fumble as well. It's tough. I almost want to pick Cooper Kupp because I think he's going to have a big day, even though I think that Hilton matchup is going to be really good. But it's tough to, we saw it last year. Brady, he didn't play a perfect game, but he didn't make any mistakes, and you get the MVP in your favor in that way. So I think it could go the same way this year. I agree with you. I think it will more often than not go to a quarterback, but I think Donald has a big day, so I'll take him.
Yeah, he's definitely got a real shot at it, no question. He's that good. Yeah, it'll be interesting. We'll see. So what do you think? You gonna try to stump the Bengal?
We're gonna try for sure, but We're going to do our special guest trivia. So how this is going to work is we're going to ask you 5 questions relating to the Bengals in some way. So far, our high score is in our whole special guest trivia is 4. Both Alyssa Morrison, who you know, and Thomas Pockner. Thomas Pockernick got 4 as well.
Yeah.
Let's see if you can beat him. So we'll just get right into it. The first question, before Joe Burrow was selected first overall last year, who was the last player that the Bengals selected first overall?
Like just the last player that they ever took first overall?
Yeah, like first overall in the draft, not
Yeah.
No, I guess the player sticks out for me. I'll say Carson Palmer.
That's correct.
All right.
Bingo.
Last number 9.
Also,
USC.
I got his jersey too, but it didn't work out. Anyway.
All right, and moving on to number 2. Obviously, Jamar Chase racked up 1,455 yards this season. Good for the most by any Bengal rookie in history. So who held the Bengals record for receiving yards prior to Jamar Chase?
Are we talking by rookie or just who held?
Yes, by rookie. Rookie receiving yards holder by Bengals rookie.
Because I know he broke Chad Johnson's single season record or Ocho, but as a rookie, so what Bengal rookie did he beat out to establish this new record? Ooh, it's tasty.
I'll tell you right now as well. He had 1,057 yards on the season.
So can I ask for hints? Like, do I get like 3 hints or something? I'm not saying you have to, because if you don't want to compromise the integrity of this trivia challenge, I'm okay with that too. I was only going to ask if there was either a year or a decade you could throw at me.
Yeah, I really want to give you a decade, but I feel like it will narrow it down a little too much.
Okay.
So I'm going to have to force you to wing it here.
That's fair.
I don't know who this is actually.
So, okay. It's a great question. I mean, obviously I'm on a clock here. I'll have to take a stab. I'll go with Chris Collinsworth.
You were so close. I believe he was 4th on the list. It was AJ Green.
AJ Green.
Nice. Good call.
I feel so bad for him. First year after he leaves the team, they go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Okay. Good call. All right, AJ. I should know. Got his jersey. All right, let's keep rolling here. All I can do is tie the top spot now. Let's see what we can do.
Third question. Before this season, the Bengals' last playoff win was in the 1990-1991 season. Who was the team that they beat that year? They only had 1 playoff win.
You want the score as well when they beat Houston 41-14? Is that what you're looking for?
I mean, I was only looking for the team, but
listen, we remember that because it's been that long, and when you're hanging on to glory that long. But one of my closest friends growing up was a huge Warren Moon fan and a big Oilers fan. That was a big rivalry. So that was, anytime you get a chance to beat Jerry Glanville and the Oilers, that's a beautiful thing. So anyway, there's 2 down.
Yep.
2 in the win column.
All right. So I took a little deep dive on this one because I did want to try to stump you. You were brought on to CTV News for the Huddle back in 2017 to discuss Week 8 of the NFL. And in that segment, you provided a bust and a bust out for Week 8 of the NFL. Obviously, now it's 5 years down the line, so I'll give you a bit of a hint. The bust and the bust out, both of those players will be in Super Bowl 56 this Sunday.
That's amazing. Okay. Bust, and it was in 2017.
Yeah.
All right, both offensive players because it was a fantasy segment.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let me see if I can piece this one together. Woo, that's fun. All right. I gotta think OBJ is one of them. No.
You want to guess a second before I? Here, I'll give you another chance here. This is one of the probably the hardest question we've asked.
Yeah, I mean it's obscure, but I love that. I love that about you. I love that about this question, man. It's like, I mean, I'm just trying to think who was playing in the league, who would be a guy who would potentially be there. So that's why OBJ sort of seemed like. All right, should I take? I mean, to me, it's like it's got to come. I mean, I won't say my answer, but it's got to come down to someone on the Rams just because I'm thinking of who was in the league. So it's between Stafford. It's why I threw OBJ's name in the hat. Maybe I'm missing. Trying to think, was Cup in the mix back then? But I don't remember.
I believe he was drafted 2018.
Yeah, so I don't remember.
That was
right.
his rookie year. 17, 18
So
was
anyway,
his rookie year.
Right.
I'll just put it out there, maybe just because. Just trying to think if I'm missing anybody. I guess Boyd was around then. But I've thrown out Boyd. It's a bust out back then. Okay.
Final answer?
I'll take Tyler Boyd and Matthew Stafford.
You get half a point. Matthew Stafford was the bust out, or no, he was the bust as a Detroit Lions quarterback, obviously, and the bust out was Joe Mixon.
It was Mixon.
Yeah, you mentioned, he didn't get a lot of carries the game before. He complained about it, and you were anticipating he got a lot more. And I believe he did have a pretty damn good game. So
nice. Well,
pretty
it
spot on.
just goes to show how fast 4 years go by, and that you don't necessarily realize Mixon was there for some of the lean times. But anyway, I'll take my half point. Just trying to, at least I got a passing grade. Now I get to hopefully get a little something more. We'll see. Great question, by the way.
Thank you.
All right, final question. In the Bengals' last Super Bowl appearance in 1989, who scored their lone touchdown in the game?
That was a kickoff return by Stanford Jennings.
Correct.
And what's even cooler about that one is that the guy who was chasing him down the field was a CFL superstar named Terry Greer, who played for the Argos and signed with San Francisco that year. He was like their third or fourth receiver, but he was a special teams guy. And the great shot of Jennings, number 36, busting through. Like, if you could ask me 100 questions about Super Bowl 23 and I would get everyone right, because that stuff is just indelibly stamped. But great question, Stanford Jennings. There you go.
That's an iconic game. Obviously, didn't end well for the Bengals with the touchdown from Joe Montana to John Taylor, but great game nonetheless.
You know what? Listen, you look at it all. It was a great game. That was at a time when the NFC totally dominated the AFC.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you had San Francisco winning the next year 55-10 over Denver. Yeah, Denver couldn't keep it close. You have those Washington teams, the New York Giant teams, and then later Dallas, just annihilating the AFC. It's a small consolation because we're up 16-13 with 2.5, 3 minutes to go, and Montana, builds upon his legend by leading the team down in the famous, hey, is that John Candy in the stands? To loosen up everybody in the huddle. It is a great story. I was always proud of that Bengals team. They were a really good team. Not many teams could roll with a team like the Niners. They blew out everybody else, but we kept it close. But close is only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. It doesn't count in the Super Bowl. We got to hopefully third time's the charm for Cincy this time around.
Hopefully.
Great questions, guys. Great questions. 3.5. I mean,
one of our better scores.
You're up there.
You should be proud.
Appreciate that. If I could go back and guess AJ, I probably would. But hey, that's the way it goes. Well, listen, what can I say? Where are you guys going to be watching the game this weekend?
Probably just at the house. Probably with my dad. Probably, I assume.
So you got your dad. I'm watching it with my mom. How about you, Riley? Who are you watching it with?
I feel kind of bad. I would love. Usually I watch the game with my parents, but I'll be watching the game here at the house in Toronto with a couple of the guys from the program as well. But yeah, I'll visit home prior. Get that.
Anything special on the menu? Do you like to indulge on Super Bowl Sunday? Is there like a signature dish that would be your go-to for the Super Bowl itself?
For me, it's got to be the buffalo chicken dip.
Oh,
it's a big play in the Keenan household, but you got to have the multi-grain Tostitos, not the regular.
The scoops? Or,
yeah. Oh yeah.
That's a money dish. Buffalo. I do enjoy a nice buffalo chicken dip. It's good. Cheese dip. How about you, Nuj? What are you going for?
I mean, it varies from year to year in my house, but usually some pizza involved for sure. But in terms of snacks, it varies from year to year. It's just really what we're feeling that year.
So what are you feeling?
I mean, we'll see Sunday, but
Intense
a big
pickle
chop.
Doritos.
I wish they don't make those
Have
anymore.
you had the ketchup, spicy ketchup, Miss Vicky's chips?
I have
yet
not.
at Costco?
Pretty
big,
good.
Big bag, grande bag. They're legit. It's a quality. If you're
Yeah.
true Canadian, looking for your Canadian ketchup chips, I guess, jokes aside, but yeah, that's a good chip. Honest chip. I'll take it heavily over the spicy dill pickle Miss
Yeah.
Vicky's, which doesn't really register for me.
Both you got to eat in moderation, or else you're ripping your mouth apart.
Yeah, that's true too. I got 100 wings on the go for Sunday. I'll be making 3 batches. I do like a dry rub kind of roast style. Those ones go actually in my oven. I have the smoker going. I'll be doing 2 batches. I've got Champions Blend Blues Hog Barbecue is one, and the second one is the little Ghost Pepper Frank's Red Hot kind of special hot wing. That's a nice little signature dish. We'll have about 30, 35 of each type spread out with some of my mom's homemade lasagna shells. They're making an appearance this year. And of course, you got to have dip. If it's a Super Bowl, there's got to be dip. There's got to be chips to dip it into. So we'll have a little bit of that too. But should be a good spread. I'm getting all the eating out of the way because I know once 6:30 happens, I'm not going to be able to eat a thing. So we'll load up between 4 and 6 and hopefully watch a great game.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
I think that's a good place to wrap up. Thank you so much, Dan, for coming on. We really appreciate you, taking time out of your day. We know you're a very busy man, so we really appreciate you coming on.
Hey, listen, I'll tell you one thing. It's a total pleasure. And, when you look at time and busyness, you make time for the people that you support and that you cheer on. And you both are at the top of that list. So it's an honor and exciting to be a part of this, and keep up the great work. Episode 55 for Super Bowl 56. I mean, that's testament to your stick-to-itiveness and your dedication. So congrats, guys. And thanks for having me.
Thank you, Dan. Truly.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you all for watching. Thank you guys for listening. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Comment down below who you think will win Super Bowl 56, and we will see you all next week. Take it easy.
Stay wild.
Peace.